You have an interest in sleep. Can you tell me why?
I think because I've always been interested in the brain. My PhD is in neuroscience. And I think sleep is one of the last explored activities of the brain. I think we don't know much about it. I think there's still a lot to understand, and it affects every aspect of behavior. So it affects your memory, it affects your emotions, it affects your physicality, it affects everything. So I've always found it really fascinating.
Do you study everything from babies to adults now?
I do. So the youngest that I've worked with was 12 months of age. And then I've worked all the way up through older adulthood in my kind of history. I focus currently on college age students and the work that is going on at the Spencer Lab, working with young infants.
Was there something in particular you wanted to look at?
Yeah, so prior to this paper, we had published a paper on naps and just regular declarative memory. So just remembering where objects were located in space on a computer screen. And we found this really powerful data. But we had also done some work to see what was going on in the brain while the child was sleeping. And noticed that the child's nap typically doesn't include a particular sleep stage called REM sleep. And we know from adults that REM sleep is associated with emotional processing and emotional memory consolidation in adults. However, if you think of what a napless toddler looks like, they're very emotionally dysregulated. They're either really excited or they're really grumpy. And so we couldn't figure out how these two things went together. How are they processing their emotions over a nap when they're lacking this important sleep stage for emotional processing? So that led us to ask this question and to wonder, could we identify things going on in the brain while the child is napping to help them process their emotions? Or did they really need that overnight sleep in order to get those benefits?
Tell me a little bit about how you and your colleagues set out to study this.
We started with a study in the classroom. So we would go into preschools and we would teach children, we would tell them these little stories that were emotional. This person was really nice or this person was really mean. And then we would have them nap and then look at how well they could identify those people. So which of these people was Sally, who was really nice to you? And so what we'd be looking at is their ability to remember people in their experience that were positive or negative. And then we'd also do the same thing the following morning after overnight sleep. And what we were finding was that following the nap, we really didn't see a whole lot of benefit. But then the next morning, if they had napped, they remembered significantly more of these faces. That led us to then do an in-lab version of the study where we had little kids come into our lab and we'd hook them up with this cute little cap to study their brainwaves while they were sleeping. And they would take both their nap and an overnight sleep in the lab. And then they'd come back another week and they'd do the same thing but without taking the nap. So we'd prevent them from sleeping during the day to see how that affected their overnight sleep.
What did you and your colleagues find?
We found that what was really important was that the nap was leading to changes in processing overnight. So it was the combination of the nap and that overnight sleep together that led them to have this overall benefit.
Talk to me about the benefit. How significant was it?
It's a little tricky because of the way that we were doing this, but I would say about a 10% increase in their memory for these images was very significant. If they had napped the day before and gotten a good night's sleep.
When you say 10% is significant for a child, can you put that in context?
The preschool age is also when children are doing a lot of their socio-emotional learning. They're learning how to share, they're learning how to work with other children. And so it is important for them to remember this experience was a positive experience and this one was a negative experience. This person treated me very nicely, this person was a little mean to me, to help them figure out and navigate how they work in a social environment. And that work is so foundational to when they become an adult and learn who to be interacting with and who to try to avoid. And situations in which they can recognize early on, this isn't a good situation for me, I should avoid this situation. So it's setting that foundation.
What do these findings say to you and other researchers?
This research to me suggests that naps need to be part of a conversation about children's development, especially within the realm of socio-emotional learning, and that encouraging children to nap, even and in this time frame when children naturally start to wean themselves off of napping, encouraging parents and teachers to continue to try to promote the nap as long as they can, I think will be beneficial long term.
What do you suggest to parents based on this study?
Sleep is always a really difficult thing for parents, and I think the first thing I need to say is every child is different. So the same things won't work with every kid. We do know sleep patterns have a tendency to have some genetic orientation. So if you're a short sleeper, your child will also probably be a short sleeper. So that's the first thing. But then the second thing is recognizing that preschool age children are also learning to be defiant. They're learning that there are boundaries that they can push against. And one of the easiest boundaries for them to push against is bedtimes, whether that's at nap or whether at night. And it can be really frustrating when you know your child needs sleep and they just tell you they're not tired, or they say they need another glass of water or something like that. My recommendation to parents is to recognize that they do really still need this nap, and to do their best to encourage their sleep, healthy sleep habits in their children.
What kinds of things, again, can parents promote so that they can get their kids into bed?
Children do really well with consistency and with rules. As much as they're defiant, rules are really important for kids. So my recommendation for parents is you start with a typical routine that at a certain time of day, you always go through these particular steps to get to bedtime. It's going to be helpful for children's bodies to naturally prepare themselves to sleep. So whether that's bath time, brushing teeth, you read 2 books, and then they have to go to bed. And set those rules. If your child is one of those kids who asks for another glass of water or asks for a bathroom break, develop that into your rules and then stick to them. There's this tendency to want to be a little flexible, and that flexibility leads to children learning that they can get away with and push parents into extending this time. And remember that when children are doing it, it's because they want to spend more time with you, and that I know it's really frustrating, but at the end of the day, that sleep that they're going to get is going to benefit you guys the next day and the next day, and benefit those children long term.
How long do you suggest parents try to incorporate the nap into the day?
One thing that I would suggest is to just be aware of your child's cues. A lot of times the nap will actually shorten in time. That'll be starting an indication that they maybe don't need the nap every single day. And then also observing how bedtimes change. So if a child actually really needs a nap and they don't take a nap during the day, bedtimes will actually be harder. You're stressing the body, you're stressing the brain by having them basically be sleep deprived. So a lot of parents will tell me, well, my child doesn't sleep well at night, so I want to not have them take the nap in the day, and that will therefore make it easier at bedtime. And a lot of times that's the complete opposite of what's going to happen. If, however, you do find that your child takes a normal nap and then just physically can't go to sleep at night, that might be an indication that you don't need the nap anymore. But again, you typically see a shortening of the nap. They'll fall asleep at their typical nap time and then wake up a little earlier and a little earlier. And that's the brain naturally telling them that they don't need that nap anymore.
Walk me through the steps of what you would do with the kids in the lab. What would you and your colleagues be looking for in terms of brain patterns or waves, sure, and what did that indicate?
Your brain goes through changes while you're sleeping. So a lot of people have heard of REM sleep, but they don't realize that there's actually 3 other non-REM sleep stages that your brain goes through over the course of a sleep cycle. And so what we were doing when we put on the caps is the caps have electrodes on the scalp, which measures EEG or brain activity, as well as electrodes in the eyes and the chin to measure eye movements and muscle activity. And with all of that, that's called polysomnography or PSG. With all of those electrodes, we can identify the different sleep stages that the brain is in over the course of the night or over the course of a nap. And then we can also look more into some of the microstructure of brain activity, looking for things like sleep spindles, which are these markers that are indicative of memory consolidation, or slow waves, which are particularly involved in helping your child's brain get back to normal, things like that.
Is there anything I didn't ask you about the study that you would want people to know?
I think for me personally, I hear a lot from parents, kind of two sides of the story, that they're really frustrated by sleep, or that it's really obvious that children need to sleep. And so I think for me, what I was really surprised by was that the data wasn't what we originally hypothesized, and that sometimes we do need the science to look at something as simple as a kid napping, which we know is healthy, but understanding the ways in which it's healthy, understanding the ways in which some of these things are leading to these benefits that we know will be long-term benefits, it's really important that we continue to have that science and stuff that seems really simple, because oftentimes the simplest things end up being the most complicated things.